Seeing none. And,
I have an announcement.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to disclose, not for this project, but I had mentioned in the previous special meeting that I had met with the applicant for the McCarthy parking lot. I also met for a future project for this 1000 Gibraltar. So I just want to let folks know.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Chuang. Any other announcements?
Hey, Chair, sorry to interrupt, but we're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Liu. We appreciate your hard work there. And Planning Director and the staff, any announcements beyond the general plan drop-off?
Yeah, that was my one announcement. I do have one other one I'll just briefly mention. Tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, there will be a special city council meeting. This will be to discuss with the public the Home Key project, which is located on Hillview Court. It's received a bit of attention, and so the council has felt it necessary to have a public meeting, and that was put together. It will, again, a special community meeting for that grant project tomorrow afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock.
Okay, and for access to that Zoom, is that through the city website postings?
So Chair, I want to do our public comment instructions, if that's okay,
Absolutely.
For the community. So members of the online audience may provide verbal comments live during this meeting. You must first register to join the Zoom meeting by providing your name and an email address to the city via the link provided on the agenda. The city will send you a special Zoom link that will allow you to join the virtual meeting and make comments. Your email address will not be disclosed. When the meeting chair calls for public comments, registered meeting attendees who wish to speak must click on the raise hand icon. The meeting secretary will call upon the speakers one at a time, so please listen carefully for your name to be called. Those participating via mobile phone will need to dial *9 to use the raise hand feature. When their name is called, they will need to dial *6 to unmute their phone. Mobile phone numbers will be displayed in the live meeting. All speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes or less on any item at the discretion of the meeting chair. Each person shall be limited to 1 comment per agenda item and 1 comment for non-agenda items. No response is required from city officials or city staff on any item that is not on the agenda. The online written comment form previously used for virtual meetings is no longer available for public comment. Now, for our community members who we do have 2 call-in numbers, so you could listen to the meeting in either Spanish or Vietnamese, and that's listed on the screen. Should you want to make a comment, the interpreter when prompted, the interpreter will ask attendees wishing to provide public comment to raise their hand, using *9, and then once again *6 to unmute themselves. The interpreter will call on the attendee to provide public comment, then the interpreter will request to speak in the primary meeting. And those are the instructions.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. And while we're on the subject here with regards to the public comments, that's just slightly outside of the order, but since we're on it, I'd like to note, that because of the potentially a larger number of public comments being involved, and also translational services be provided, that the speakers will be provided 1 minute of public speaking time, and the translators will be provided up to 2 minutes of speaking time, in translating the just previous speakers' notations. And secondly, here there will be no ceding of speaking time from one party to another. So each person who wishes to speak will be speaking on his or her own accord. And we appreciate that the comments to be kept brief, concise, and also to the considered item at hand for this evening's agenda. I'd like to thank you in advance for your cooperation and observance of the conditions and rules. Thank you very much. And the next agenda items, public forum. Those interested are invited to address the Planning Commission on any subject not on today's agenda, orally via a Zoom webinar, instructions above. And speakers may provide their name and city of residence for the record, and comments may be limited to 2 minutes or less at the chair's discretion. At the discretion of the chair. As an item not listed on the agenda, no response is required from the city staff or the City Planning Commission, and no action can be taken. Ms. Medina, any public comments?
Chair, we have one community member in the queue, Urvish Mehta.
Okay, Mr. Mehta, you have 2 minutes, please. For IT, please note 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, city staff and city council. I wanted to mention that recently there has been a induction of Trader Joe's within the city of Milpitas. Still, city of Milpitas would require quite a few local grocery stores like a 99 Ranch, as well as the Whole Foods. Having an addition of this, the grocery stores would be creating a job, as well as many other aspects for the city of Milpitas. Currently there are only 2 grocery stores, primarily the Safeway, and as well as there is a Smart and Final, and as well as there are some local grocery stores out there around Sunny Hills, and as well as around the Milpitas City Council area. So I request the Planning Commission to consider the inclusion of more grocery stores, as a part of a development of for the city of Milpitas. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for your comment. And Ms. Medina, any other public comments?
We don't have any community members in the queue for public comment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Medina. And moving on to the next agenda item. Here is the approval of minutes.
Chair, do you need a motion to close the public forum?
Thank you.
No motion is necessary to close the public forum.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And the next agenda items on the approval of minutes. The minutes have been delayed, and so we will consider this, the approval of minutes in the following Planning Commission meeting. Moving on to the next agenda item, and this is the public hearing item for the Sunny Hills Apartments. And staff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just provide a quick introduction, and then our senior planner, Rosalind Thompson, is here to provide the staff report. So this item has been a while in the making, and we're very pleased to bring it to the Planning Commission tonight for a recommendation to the council. The package of permits or entitlements includes a site development permit, a planned unit development amendment, a tree removal permit, and the environmental assessment for an infill project. It's 44 residential units within an existing 171 unit multifamily apartment complex. This is, of course, the Sunny Hills complex in the northern area of the city. The project includes demolition and reconstruction of the community building. The existing community building will be demolished and then replaced with a new building. And there's some additional site improvements such as parking and landscaping and so forth. All of those details will be presented by Rosalind. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that, and I'll turn the time over to Rosalind for the presentation of the staff report. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is Rosalind Thompson, Senior Planner, and good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. In this presentation, I will give you a brief overview of the project, followed by the project's history, give a summary of the entitlements sought, go over the architecture and other features of the project, and then conclude my presentation with the environmental review process and staff recommendation. I have a couple of clarifications to make. So please note that the request to amend the PUD to allow less than the 25% minimum landscaping as part of the proposed project is inapplicable because the project meets the 25% minimum required by the zoning code. And also, based on a clarification of the zoning code, the request to allow 9 of 44 units with private open space of 200 square feet is also not required. Therefore, both of those items do not require a plan unit development amendment. So the plan unit development amendment will just be limited to the parking stall dimensions and the removal of the common open space. Both the applicant and the environmental consultant have presentations for the Planning Commission tonight. Next slide. So, project overview. The applicant requests to develop an additional 44 residential units to an existing 171 unit multifamily dwelling complex. The development would be comprised of 7 buildings, 5 two-story buildings and 1 3-story building and an office and leasing center. The new units are comprised of 14 one-bedroom and 32 bedroom units, with 7 affordable units to extremely low income individuals or families. 87 new parking spaces are also proposed. The project will require the removal of 31 protected trees from the site, and the applicant has proposed to install 86 replacement trees. Other site improvements include a new driveway to connect an existing drive aisle to a new fire access road. Maintaining the affordability of the existing units is considered separately from the planning entitlements. Next slide. The project site is zoned R3 multifamily high density residential, surrounded by R16 single family zoned properties to the south and east, and C1 neighborhood commercial properties to the north and west. The site is also located in Plan Unit Development number 10, approved on September 16, 1968. Next slide. Here is the project vicinity map. The project site is approximately 12.66 acres, irregularly shaped and developed with a 171 unit apartment complex comprised of 1 and 2-story residential buildings. The project site is bound by Dixon Road to the north, single family residential uses to the east and south, and various commercial uses, City Square Center, to the west. Next slide. Development of the project would occur within the southeast corner of the site. The project area is surrounded by the existing apartment complex buildings to the north, west, and south, and by single-family residential uses to the east. Next slide. The existing 171-unit multifamily complex was approved on September 16, 1968, as part of Plan Unit Development number 10. Constructed in 1971, the complex consists of 43 multi-unit residential buildings containing 171 units and a community and leasing center with an attached manager's unit. The complex consists of studio apartments, 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units, and 4-bedroom units. The existing development includes a community center with attached manager's unit, 7.35 acres of open space, 7 laundromats, carports, and open parking spaces. The complex has undergone minimal change over the past 49 years. Next slide. However, at the date of this meeting, planning staff was informed that 2 trees were removed at the location of a former playground. Also, on September 29th, 2018, the stop work order was issued to stop demolition of playground equipment and hardscape at 5 locations on the site. Next slide. The project requests the following entitlements: a plan unit development amendment to amend the existing plan unit development, number 10, Sunny Hills Apartments, to provide parking stalls at a dimension of 9 feet by 8 feet, where dimensions of 10 feet by 20 feet are required, and removal of the existing common space area to accommodate the 44 additional units. Next slide. A site development permit to allow the development of an additional 44 residential units, the demolition and construction of an existing leasing and community building, and associated site improvements, a tree removal permit to remove 31 protected trees and replace them with 86 trees, and an environmental assessment to review and certify an initial study mitigated negative declaration pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15070. Next slide. This is the site plan of the proposed project. The proposed project would include 7 new buildings, 5 of which, buildings A through E, would be 2 stories and a maximum of 26 feet in height and contain 3 to 7 residential units each. The largest building, building F, to the east of the property or next to the east property line, would be 3 stories and a maximum of 35 feet in height and would contain 20 residential units. Building F would also include 20 new carports on the ground level above 1 and 2 story apartments. The proposed project will also include a new leasing and community building. Direct access to the project site is still provided by Sunny Hills Court, which is accessible from Dixon Road to the north and North Milpitas Boulevard to the west. However, the Sunny Hills Court bulb out and parking area that currently exists near the existing community building would be removed to accommodate the proposed buildings. Additionally, the existing alleyway located north of proposed building B would be modified to allow for vehicular access to the drive aisle adjacent to building F, which would provide access to the new carports and parking spaces. Also, the existing driveway west of the proposed building E would be extended to connect the drive aisle adjacent to building F. A total of 4 new bicycle parking spaces would also be installed adjacent to the proposed leasing community building. Next slide. The image above is a 3D rendering of one of the proposed 2-story buildings. Below the rendering is an image of the existing buildings on the site. The applicant has chosen to design the new buildings in a similar mid-20th century architectural style as the existing buildings. Next slide. So the next 4 slides are just elevations of the front and rear of the 7 new buildings. So this slide is the front and rear elevations for buildings A, C, and D, which are 2 stories in height and contain 1 and 2 bedroom units. Next slide. Here are the front and rear elevations for buildings B and E, which are 2 stories in height and also contain 1 and 2 bedroom units. Next slide. Here are the front and side elevations of building F. It would be 3 stories and a maximum of 35 feet in height and would contain 20 residential units. Building F would include 20 new carports on the ground level above 1 and 2 story apartments. Next slide. Here's an elevation of the new leasing and community building, which would be approximately 1,791 square feet in size and would include office space as well as laundry for use by current and new residents of the project site. Next slide.
Rosalind, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The translator is asking if you could speak just a little bit slower so they can
Okay.
your words. Sorry, it's a wonderful presentation. They want to capture all of your words. Thank you.
Okay. As for parking, the apartment complex currently has 259 off-street parking spaces, including 173 covered spaces and 86 uncovered spaces for guests. As for the proposed project, although the project qualifies for a density bonus and 2 incentives, concessions under the state density bonus law, neither are requested at this time. Instead, the project has requested the reduced parking ratios under the state density bonus law, which are specifically 1 parking space for studio and 1-bedroom units, and 2 parking spaces for 2-bedroom units, and an elimination of all guest parking. Here's a table which analyzes the parking required and the parking provided. So for 1-bedroom units, there are 14 units. The parking rate is 1 per unit. Therefore, the spaces required are 14. The proposed project provides 21 parking spaces for 1-bedroom units. As for 2-bedroom units, there are 30 units. The required rate under the state density bonus law is 2 parking spaces per unit. Therefore, the spaces required are 60 parking spaces. The spaces provided by the proposed project are 60. The subtotal required under the state density bonus law is 74 parking spaces. The number of parking spaces provided by the project is 81, which exceeds the number required by 7. There are no guest parking spaces required. However, the applicant has provided an additional 6 parking spaces. The proposed total is 87 parking spaces, which includes those provided for the 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments, and the 6 guest parking stalls. Next slide. This table compares the existing common and private open space of the existing project, proposed project, and proposed and existing project combined. Per the zoning code, the total usable open space required is 200 square feet per unit. Usable open space by the code is defined as any open space, the smallest dimension of which is at least 4.5 feet, and which is not used as storage or for movement of motor vehicles. Therefore, under the zoning code, the total square footage of common and private usable open space required per unit for the existing project is 34,200 square feet. So that's 171, as in the number of units, multiplied by 200 square feet, which gives us 34,200 square feet. As for the existing units, the total usable open space, which is a combination of both private and common open space, is a total of 97,128 square feet, or 568 square feet per unit. The zoning code also requires that at least 30% of the required open space be contiguous to and provide for private usable open space of an individual dwelling unit. In the case of the existing units, the minimum private usable open space required is 30% of the 34,200 square feet, or 10,260 square feet. The existing private usable square feet provided is 32,797 square feet, and these are all approximations. As for the proposed project, with a common open space square footage on average for the entire site at 246 square feet per unit, so that would be 44 units plus the existing 171 units, which equals 215 units. And that divided by, or the common open space divided by that number, which is approximately, the common open space is approximately 53,049 square feet. It comes out to roughly 246 square feet. And then the additional 7,730 square feet of private space provided by the proposed units, that average comes to approximately, and I know it says here 443 square feet, but it's actually 422, roughly 422 square feet. The private usable open space provided is 7,730 square feet, where 2,640 square feet is provided. As for the whole project, the total usable open space area required is 43,000 square feet, which is 215 times 200, for an average of 200 square feet per unit. An average of approximately 435 square feet is proposed for both common and private usable open space. As for the private open space, 40,527 square feet is proposed, where 12,900 square feet is required. Next slide. According to the applicant, there's a total of approximately 64,439 square feet of common space currently provided throughout 9 different common areas within the existing apartment complex. With development of the proposed project, the total amount of common open space would be reduced to approximately 52,847 square feet among 11 different common open space areas. Next slide. As for private usable open space, this site plan shows the layout of private open space areas of the proposed 44 units. 8 of those units would have a private open space square footage of 200 square feet, and the other units, 36 other units, would have less than 200 square feet. Next slide. As part of the landscape plan, the project will require the removal of 31 protected trees from the site, and in accordance with the City of Milpitas tree protection program, the applicant will install 86 replacement trees on the project site. Replacement trees include 24-inch box crepe myrtle, pistachio, London plane, and red oak, and 15-gallon Indian hawthorn trees. Additionally, a variety of shrubs, perennials, grasses, ground covers, and vines will be introduced on the project site as shown in the landscape plan. Next slide. Here are examples of the fences, walls, and accessory structures and other equipment that will be added to the site. And part of that equipment is also a play area. And if the Planning Commission would like to, you can get more information from the applicant. The applicant can give more of a description of the play area in their presentation. Next slide. On November 20th, 2019, the applicant hosted a neighborhood meeting. There are approximately 100 attendees from the public, and language translation services in Vietnamese were provided. Comments received included those regarding project design and the continuing affordability of the existing apartment complex. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and shelter-in-place orders of the state of California and County of Santa Clara, an online public forum on the city website has been held in lieu of a second in-person neighborhood meeting from September 13th, 2020 to September 23rd, 2020. Next slide. Planning staff provided public notice of the application in accordance with city and state public noticing requirements. A notice was published in the Milpitas Post on September 11th, 2020. A public notice was also provided on the project site and on the city's website. At the time of preparation of this presentation, there have been several inquiries from the public related to noise, air quality, tree removal, open space, and nesting birds. Next slide. As this is a discretionary project, it is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. An initial study was prepared to analyze the potential environmental effects of the proposed project. A draft mitigated negative declaration was prepared pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15070. CEQA requires a minimum review period of 20 days to circulate an MND for public review, which began on September 17th, 2020. The comment period ended on October 7th, 2020. Next slide. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission open and close the public hearing, consider the initial study mitigated negative declaration pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15002 K2 and 15070, and adopt resolution number 20-019, recommending to the City Council approval of site development permit, planned unit development amendment, tree removal permit, and environmental assessment, subject to the findings and conditions of approval, and recommending certification of a mitigated negative declaration pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15002 K2 and 150.
That's okay. It used to bug me, Mom, but it doesn't bug me now. Because I know even if it's
apologize, Ms. Thompson. I got some additional talking sounds coming across your presentation. Was there someone else making the presentation or crossed over? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Thompson, would you please continue?
Yes, that concludes staff's report on this item. I do have Matthew Wiswell from LSA, the environmental consultant, present, as well as the architect to discuss the project and also the initial study mitigated negative declaration.
Thank you, staff. And how much time would the consultants need for their presentation? If someone can enlighten the chair with your requirements.
Good evening. This is Matthew as well with LSA, the CEQA consultant. I'll need 5 to 10 minutes total.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and call it 7 minutes and hope that that'll serve the purpose. Planning Director.
Before you move on to CEQA, I do have one comment to add to staff's report.
Would you please, Planning Director?
Yeah, this is just one minor detail, but it didn't make it into Rosalind's report because it just happened yesterday. I did want to inform the Planning Commission that city staff held an in-person on-site meeting with the residents of the Sunny Hills, the existing residents of the Sunny Hills apartment complex last night from 5:30 to 7:30. This was done at the request of the Tenants Association. We had about 30 members in attendance. Everyone social distanced and wore masks. We had Vietnamese translation, and it was a good exchange of comments and questions about this project as well as over other issues related to the Sunny Hills complex. But that was in addition to the meeting that was held, the other two meetings and the online forum that Rosalind mentioned in her report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Thomas. And before going to the Mr. Wiswell, are you representing the applicant group as the only speaker for the applicant group?
No, we are consultants on the city's behalf. So I believe the applicant team has brought their own team as well.
Absolutely. So in the interest of keeping the meeting moving forward, if we can just go ahead and truncate you out to about 5 minutes, hopefully that will serve your purpose. Thank you.
Sure. So good evening. Again, my name is Matthew Wiswell. I'm an environmental planner at LSA. With me tonight as well is Teresa Wallace, who's our principal in charge. And as the city's CEQA consultants, we prepared the ISMND for the 1724 Sunny Hills project. I did catch Ned's note earlier about speaking slower, so I'll try to do my best to speak slow and clear, but also stay within my 5 minutes. So next slide, please. So I'd like to begin briefly by going over the purpose of the California Environmental Quality Act, or more commonly known as CEQA, and then we'll discuss the analysis that's actually included in the ISMND. So the purpose of CEQA is to provide information about potential environmental impacts of a project and identify ways to mitigate or avoid those impacts. The CEQA process is separate from the process for project review and approval. CEQA documents are prepared to inform decision makers so that they can look at a project's potential environmental impacts that are identified and make informed decisions about a project based on that information. So this means that the merits of the project are not considered in the CEQA process, and the ISMND does not include a recommendation as to whether or not the project should be approved. Next slide, please. So this slide just lays out the basics of the proposed project, much of which Rosalind has already covered. As she noted, the project consists of 44 new residential units and a new community and leasing building. Next slide, please. So as I described previously, the purpose of CEQA is to identify potential environmental impacts and ways to avoid those. So the CEQA process begins with the preparation of an initial study, which includes an evaluation of each environmental topic required by CEQA. If it's determined that a project could have a significant and unavoidable environmental impact, which are those that are still significant even after mitigation is implemented, an environmental impact report, or commonly known as an EIR, is prepared and alternatives must be considered. If mitigation measures do reduce those potential impacts to a less than significant level, a mitigated negative declaration, or an MND, is prepared. As you can see on this slide, and as Rosalind noted previously, there were no significant unavoidable impacts that were identified as part of the initial study, and therefore an MND was prepared. One of the common misconceptions that we hear about CEQA is that an ISMND doesn't include the same amount of analysis as an EIR, and that if an EIR were prepared, it could reveal more impacts. However, that is not the case, as each of these documents thoroughly evaluates the same topics according to the thresholds established by the state CEQA guidelines, and the actual analysis of the potential impacts is the same whether it's an ISMND or an EIR. So the ISMND includes a full evaluation of all 20 topics that are required by CEQA. Next slide, please. So I'd now like to focus on two of those topics, in particular, cultural resources and transportation. So as described on this slide, the entire existing apartment complex, which includes 44 buildings total, does appear to be eligible for inclusion on the California Register of Historical Resources as a historic district. This is based on its association with the integrated joint public-private housing development that was first allowed under Section 236 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as well as the mid to late 20th century growth of the city of Milpitas and the works of the original architect, Ethan Andrew Jennings Jr. However, the leasing and community building, which is the only building that would be removed as part of the project, does not appear to be individually eligible for listing on this register. That is, if it weren't within the Sunny Hills apartment complex, it would not be considered a historic resource. So CEQA guidelines section 10564.5B3, which is listed on the slide, generally states that a project that follows the Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of historic properties can be considered to have a less than significant impact. These standards include guidelines for preserving, rehabilitating, restoring, and reconstructing historic buildings, each of which has their own criteria. Since the remaining 43 buildings on the project site would not be altered, the guideline for rehabilitation was selected for the proposed project. Next slide, please. The guidelines for rehabilitating historic properties allow for alterations to a site or setting, including the selective removal of buildings that are not character defining. As I mentioned before.
Mr. Wiswell, if I can request, Chair received request for you to slow down a tad.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem. So as I mentioned earlier, the existing community building and leasing building that would be demolished is not individually eligible as a historic resource, but is also not character defining, as even with its removal, the entire apartment complex would remain comprehensible to residents and visitors as a whole. The new buildings included in the project would be consistent with the rehabilitation guidelines, as the use, visibility, and spatial relationship, scale and massing, materials, ornament, and style would be compatible with the remaining 43 buildings. The guidelines do call for new buildings to be differentiated, which this project accomplishes by providing varying building symmetries and scale. The ISMND does include a recommended condition of approval to incorporate slightly different paint colors and siding than the existing buildings. However, these are only recommended to further differentiate the new buildings and not required for compliance with the rehabilitation guidelines.
Mr. Wiswell, you have the 5 minutes, and since we're requesting you speak a little slower, so can you wrap up your presentation in 2 minutes so we can move on to other consultants?
Sure, I think I can.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So this slide highlights the transportation analysis for the proposed project. As you can see, on-site traffic counts and observations were taken in February 2020, so pre any COVID-related closure. The proposed project itself is anticipated to generate 20 trips in the AM peak hour and 25 trips in the PM peak hour. The Valley Transportation Authority, which the city utilizes their guidelines for transportation analyses, only requires a full traffic study for when there would be more than 100 trips in either the AM or PM peak hour. So as you can see, we're far below that. As some of you may know, vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, is the new significance criteria for determining transportation impacts as of July 1. You may be more familiar with level of service, or LOS. However, based on recent case law and SB 743, this can no longer be used to determine environmental impact. So I would like to move to the next slide, please.
Okay, Mr. Wiswell, time flies when we're having fun.
Sure.
So do you have any real significant item that which you need to summarize?
Yeah, if you could just go to the next slide, I can summarize the 4 bullet points pretty quickly.
Okay, please.
So in determining whether a project has a VMT impact, the city has pretty broad leeway in setting significance thresholds. The OPR's guidelines have stated that a project that's within half a mile of a high quality transit corridor generally can be presumed to not have a VMT impact as long as it meets the 4 bullet points on the slide, which is generally, it doesn't provide any more parking than required. It's consistent with sustainable community strategy. It doesn't replace any affordable units, and it has a certain floor area ratio. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about these specific criteria or go more into depth to them if there are any questions about them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wiswell, for your presentation. Appreciate it. Any other consultants who will be making presentations on behalf of the applicant? Hello? Anyone else on the consultant team that will be making presentations? The architect or the applicant? Anyone?
I did provide, Chair Tao.
Yes.
I did provide slides The architect had a PDF
Okay,
that they provided.
all right. So Ms. Thompson, I assume that you'll be speaking on behalf of the architect, or?
No, the architect should be here.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello,
Okay.
can you hear us as well?
Okay, great. So who would be making the other presentation, the architect or Ms. Kiritis?
Yes, both of us.
Both of us. We'll go ahead and kick it off. Do you want to start with some of the history?
Okay,
Sure.
and before you start, I apologize for interruption here. I'd like to go ahead to condense your between the two presentations. We'll condense it to 7 minutes, so this way we can move the meeting along, if you would.
Sure. I thought Rosalind did a fabulous job making the presentation, summing up the project. Just a couple minor clarifications. Historically, we bought the property in 1985. None of the units had carpet. We spent the first 10 years of the project redoing the insides, taking out all the linoleum and putting carpet throughout, redid the kitchens, put fences on the property. So we've made a lot of improvements. Nothing on the structural side other than exterior fences. I just wanted to get some clarification that we put a lot of money into it. Secondly, of the 44 units, 7 of those units, or roughly 16% of this project, is for extremely low income tenants. So that's a huge percentage that's being contributed for low and moderate income housing for the city of Milpitas. What this project doesn't show, in addition to doing the work that we're doing in building these units, we're going to spend roughly $500,000 redoing 32 roofs, which are 32 buildings are left to do new roofs. We're replacing them not because they're leaking, it's time to be putting new roofs on the building. In addition to that, we're going to patch and reseal the driveways after the development's done at a cost of another $500,000. And those are things that aren't included in this presentation. I just thought it was a material fact. And I think that's pretty much it. And we'll let our architect cover everything else, and I'll be able to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. And the architect from
Yes.
LPMD?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Anthony Ho from LPMD Architects. The first slide here you see is that we want to demonstrate the fact that this project is not using only the green spaces to build. You can see from this aerial that a lot of area that we use are paved, actually. About half of it is actually paved area. Next slide, please. We want to mention, thank you, Rosalind, for making a very complete presentation. We just want to fill in a couple other points that she had not had a chance to say. This slide here shows that the way we organize the building is to look at all the rest of the building. We try to use the same size, the same form, and the location of it is kind of a meandering pattern, you can see, so that when it's all built out, it will all blend in almost seamlessly. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this one shows, as Rosalind said, is to get a flavor of the existing architecture, but you can see that we actually get the roof line on the top one. You see the new ones. We get the roof line a lot more articulated and make it a little more interesting. But again, we don't want to deviate from the existing too much to make it look alien to the existing. Next slide, please. The owner is going to spend a lot of time and money to upgrade about 8 other smaller areas that are not fully landscaped or fully used at this time. And this is showing those areas, and I have blow up of each one. Next slide, please. That's one of the area. Not much usage here. Next. Another one. Next. You can see it's totally left deserted. Next. Again, not much use. Next. 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 And next. Next, please. So we're going to put in some fruit trees because the owners had been observing what the residents like to do. And it seems like growing fruit trees is something that can foster social interaction and to have something that they like and they can take advantage of too. So we will do that. Next. And put in new plants. And our landscape architect is here joining us if there's any question about that. Next. Play equipment, which also our landscape architect can help to explain more. Next. And benches. Next. Yeah, that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And at this time, I'd like to ask the commissioners any questions for both staff and also the applicant team, consulting team, or the applicant itself. So can I have a raised hand or physical raised hands with Commissioner Chuan?
Thank you, Chair. The architect mentioned that there's a landscape architect. Was wondering if we can hear from the landscape architect to talk a little bit more about the, the playground equipment and, some of the other landscape items.
Absolutely. I probably would do a 3-minute time slot for the landscape architect to summarize the items. Is the landscape architect joined in on a Zoom?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Jay Isaacson. I'm the landscape architect, Isaacson Wood and Associates.
Thank you for joining us. Please.
Well, Anthony summed it up pretty well. We are introducing some active recreation in the proposed new part of the project. We do have a playground there, which would be geared for elementary school age level, and it has a variety of apparatus to where it'll have climbing, sliding, and swinging apparatus to give a variety of play experiences. We've also, as Anthony, the architect, mentioned, we've introduced the fruit tree groves in these additional 8 common open space areas, which we feel will be a great benefit to the existing residences. It's really something I think that they can interact with and use in their cooking. They can harvest the citrus and the apples, the plums that we would be introducing. We've got some seating areas that go along with that, which will make those spaces, I think, much more inviting. And then the plant palette for the new area has a variety of trees, shrubs, and perennials, as Rosalind had mentioned. They're all classified as moderate to low water use, so they will conform to the water efficiency guidelines. And it'll also provide, I think, a variety of color. We've got seasonal color with some autumn foliage in the pistache. We've got flowering during the summer for the crepe myrtles. We've got quite a variety, which I think will be of great benefit to the community. So if there's any more specific questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Isaacson. Appreciate your presentation. And Commissioner Chuan, does that answer your questions?
Yes, it does. And then Also, just regarding like that particular slide that the architect had mentioned, that there was going to be some improvements around those areas there, you know, like the 7 or the 8 in each of the pictures. I'd like to understand a little bit more. I mean, it was discussed that there'll be some improvements to that. Is that what we're talking about, the landscape, those type of improvements? Are there any other outside of whatever the landscape architect had mentioned? And that question is probably more to both the architect and also the landscape architect, whichever one would be able to answer those.
I can answer that. The landscape architect here. Yes, it depicts, I think, pretty well with these photographs. This shows the existing condition, but each of those areas will be enhanced and improved with the planting of fruit trees. And we also are introducing some community gathering, some benches, and that essentially is what we're currently proposing. Anthony, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't. How about ownership? Do you have, John and Megan, anything to add?
Well, I think the colors of the trees and the plants are going to add tremendous value. And it was my idea to put the fruit trees in throughout the properties in various areas, because I think it's a huge benefit to the tenants, you know, to have fresh fruit, you know, fruits and you know, and citrus throughout, you know, the years, that I think that, you know, they can use and enjoy. So we have a combination of a lot of beautiful, colorful trees and plants that'll be enhancing that property. Just this year, which is one of the things that we've been doing, is we've taken from one end of the property to the other end of the property, just redoing the sprinkler systems and timers to be more water efficient and getting prepped for what we're going to be doing hopefully this spring. So we're going to have a lot of, you know, action throughout the property. I mean, you know, we're going to be doing, you know, 32 buildings are going to get new roofs besides the construction of the property, and we're going to improve the landscaping throughout the property, so it'll be a, you know, a beautiful and more enhanced, you know, property throughout, landscaping throughout, from one end to the other.
And just to kind of echo what Jay said, he kind of hit the nail on the head that we're approaching these areas from a social gathering standpoint. So the combination of fruit trees and benches, trying to make them a more pleasant place to spend time, not just kind of walkways.
And one of the reasons why we're putting these benches is we have a lot of seniors that live in this property. And I thought it was a good idea to, you know, create some benches throughout the property for them to, when they do their walks, you know, to sit around and talk with their friends, as well as, you know, place to sit while they're picking some fruit. I mean, this is really unusual for an apartment complex to provide, fruit trees throughout the property, and I just thought it's a huge benefit for the residents.
Thank you, sir. And Commissioner Chuan, does that answer your questions?
That does. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And commissioners, anyone else have questions? I'm not seeing your facial expression, so I'm just looking at the raised hands to see if any hands are raised. Anybody would like to speak? Okay. Hearing none. Chair, I'm sorry. I hear a voice.
I tried to raise my hand, my virtual hand, but it doesn't work. So
no problem. Commissioner Chua, please.
This is first to Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson first, if I may.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes. So we have the site development permit, we have the PUD amendment, the tree removal permit, and the environmental assessment. Those are the 4 things that we're kind of reviewing tonight. On the PUD amendment, did I hear it correctly that we, under the PUD, we're not required to provide 200 square feet of private open space to 9 of the 44 units? Did I hear that correctly? And
That
the
is
other one.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
That is correct. And that was a clarification in the code. So
Okay.
yes, that is not
Okay,
required.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that one. And the other one that we're not required is to provide less than 25% of the total lot area units. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the only one under the PUD amendment is the request to provide 9 by 18 for parking space instead of the 10 feet by 20 feet requirement. Is that true?
That's correct. And then there's the other one, which is to construct the new buildings where there is common open space.
Mm-hmm. Is that the one to connect the existing driveway aisle to the new fire access road? Is that the one we're talking about?
No, it's actually, so there's existing common open area, that grassy area that you saw in the site plan. I think the architect, thank you. So do you see sort of to the north of the project area, you see that grassy area?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was designated as common area in the original plan unit development. And per our code, if you want to, if an applicant would like to develop in an area that is designated a common area, then a planned unit development amendment is required.
So in essence, there are only 2 plan unit amendment requests because
That's correct.
we got rid of the other 2.
That's correct.
Okay, that's clear. I'm leaving it up open to anybody who would answer. On removing the 31 protective trees and replacing it with 62 replacement trees, are we including the fruit trees that we just spoke about? Is that what we're doing here?
Yes, so we are replacing the 31 trees with more than the required 62. We'll actually be replacing them with 86 new trees, and the 86 trees consist of 27 medium to large scale trees, 47 small accent trees, and 12 fruit trees.
Okay, and they will be located where the original 31 trees were before, or it will depend on the landscape?
Anthony, do you have that slide available that had the, I can't remember if that was your presentation or Rosalind's.
There's a picture that shows all the landscaping under where the trees are.
I am going to get it right now. Is the landscape plan? Okay, right here. Okay, let me get that over to the screen first, and then we can look at it together. Now, this one is the inventory, existing tree inventory. This one. This is the new planting plan, and I'll let our landscape architect talk more about it. Jay?
Yeah, we can't, with our replacement trees and mitigation trees, we can't necessarily put them in the exact location that the existing trees were, because obviously we're changing that entire space with the new proposed dwelling units and vehicular and walkway systems. But we've got, I think, a good dispersion of trees, the large scale trees you can see with those larger symbols, which would really help break up the area between buildings. We've got smaller accent trees where the landscape spaces are a little bit more confined and they're not as generous. And I think overall, we've got a well thought out design that provides a variety of trees throughout the entire project. And then along that on that slide there, if you look at the upper part of the slide, along the property boundary there, we've got some substantial trees along there to help soften that edge of the property and give some canopy across that proposed parking. So I think overall we've got a pretty well thought out design to mitigate the removal that we're proposing of those existing trees, the 31.
Could you give me 3 or 4 examples of trees that you're going to remove, please?
Yeah, primarily those 31 trees consist of Chinese elm trees. Those are the majority of the trees that will be removed. There's a range of 11-inch diameter trunk size up to 32-inch. And the largest one, the 32-inch diameter on that particular tree, it's a California pepper. There's also some American sweet gum, which is also called liquid amber trees. There's a few sycamores, and I believe there's one magnolia tree. Those are the trees that we're going to be removing. But like I said, the Chinese elm species of tree is the primary tree that has the most quantity that we're proposing to remove.
Are these trees protected?
Yes, so the ones that measure 37 inches at 4.5 feet above grade are protected.
And we're still removing them, correct? Even though they're protected?
Yes, so under the code, protected trees can be removed as long as the health of the tree is assessed, and also 2 replacement trees are proposed to replace every protected tree removed.
Okay, that's good. Can I go to the next one? The topic is parking, page 11, please. Rosalind, it's Thompson. It's page 11 of the. I don't know. It's page 11 of your. I saw it on your presentation, but I'm referring to the page 11 of the handout that were given to us.
Commissioner Chua, is that page 1.1 that which you're referring to, or 11?
Page 11 of the handout. But I saw it. Rosalind spoke about it.
Yeah, Commissioner, I also had that had a chart in my PowerPoint. We can pull up my PowerPoint and take a look at it.
Right, that one.
Okay, so maybe it's slide 16.
Let's see. It's kind of like in the where.
There it is.
This one.
Yes.
This one. Yes. I just want to point out. So, to me, this is good because what is required, you're giving us more. Is that true? Correct. This is required. Space is required, and we're providing more.
Commissioner, yes, that's correct. 74 is required under the state density bonus law because they're providing 15% affordable units. 15% of the units, additional units, are going to be affordable to extremely low and low income individuals and households. They're entitled to waivers and concessions under the state density bonus law. as well as reduced minimum parking. And so these ratios reflect those parking ratios under the state density bonus law, which is 1 per unit for studios and 1 bedrooms, and 2 per unit for 2 bedrooms.
The only thing that glaring was to me when you did this specific slide is, well, what happened to the guest parking? How are you going to compensate for that one?
Commissioner, so under the state density bonus law, no guest parking is required. So that's state law, and because they're using the parking ratios under the state density bonus law, that also does not require guest parking.
But for practical purposes, where would they park?
So
it's not required, but you know.
So the applicant has proposed, and maybe they want to elaborate on this a little bit. They've proposed those parking spaces to be next to the proposed community center, and they will be open parking spaces, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I just want to be clear on that one. Is that about right to the applicant? That's where you intend the
Yes.
parking
Yes.
to go?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner. Yes.
Okay. The original. Okay. While we're here at the subject of the different categories, there are 25 studio apartments currently without the additional 44. Is that true? I mean, it's true, right? It's what you have on 25 studio apartments.
I believe that is in my staff report.
Right, it's in your staff report. It's 41 bedrooms, 61 2 bedrooms, 43 bedrooms, 5 4 bedrooms. Can the applicant break this down for me? How many in each category? How many BMRs are there?
I didn't understand you. How many what?
She wants to know
How many
count.
can you tell us how many affordable units under each category is?
I don't have that information here.
You don't?
Stephanie probably has that.
Commissioner, you are saying about the 44 new units, right? Not the existing ones, right?
The existing one, I'm curious about that.
Oh, I do have the
understand you.
Yeah, I have the tabulation of the new ones, but I don't have the information of the old ones.
Would you say it's percentage-wise? Would you say it's 15%, 20%? Just a guess estimate?
What's the question?
How many BMRs out of the 171 currently?
How many affordable units out of the 171?
Oh, it's
it's
20 or so.
No, affordable. I believe it's 144. It's about that, 144 out of the 171, roughly.
They're below market rate? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. That's what you're asking, right?
144? Right, that's what I'm asking for. Thank you. Okay, and then I'm going to traffic, page 12 of the present of Ms. Thompson's handout. Ms. Thompson, and I saw it on your presentation. It's page 12 on the handout.
Let's see.
It's, I think, the traffic LSA, I think, did the presentation.
Yeah, so Hexagon was the sub-consultant that prepared the traffic operations analysis.
Right. Can I see that chart again, please? The traffic one.
Commissioner, I believe that is in Matthew's slides.
Yes.
I don't believe I have a chart about traffic. I have some bullet points, but no charts.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the bullet points. I'm interested in the VMT?
Sure. Was there a specific question, or would you like me to generally speak about them?
Can I just see your bullet points? Then I will remember my question.
I'll have to ask the controller of the PowerPoints to pull that up. It's slide 8 in my presentation.
Slide 8.
Both this slide and the one before it address VMT.
So, okay, my question is, so in using VMT, because that's now the law, would you have made a different assumption or conclusion if you have used the LOS?
So it's worth pointing out that LOS and VMT don't measure the same impact, right? So level of service is generally congestion at an intersection, or vehicle miles traveled, or VMT is generally how far do cars go based on what your project is providing. So in the top part of this slide here under circulation, you see that we anticipate that the project would generate 20 trips during the AM peak hour and 25 trips during the PM peak hour. And as I noted, the VTA has their transportation analysis guidelines where they don't require a full traffic study for anything under 100 trips in any peak hour. And they set that 100 trip threshold because they determined through their previous work that if a project generates less than 100 trips during a peak hour, it generally won't have an effect on level of service. So if we had done a level of service analysis on this project, it's 99% likely that it would not have had an impact and it wouldn't change our conclusion.
What about the VMT?
So we've determined that this project would be exempt from a VMT impact based on the state of California's technical guidelines for evaluating VMT impacts based on its proximity to a high quality transit corridor.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you all so much.
And if I can, Commissioner Chua, I have the official numbers. 151 units are subsidized and 2 units are lived in by our employees, which leaves 18 units not subsidized.
Okay, 18. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you. And other commissioners, and any questions? Anyone else would like to ask the applicant or staff questions? Okay, seeing none, Chair has a number of questions here, and we'll probably go down the list. First of all, like to ask Ms. Maggie and also the planning staff here in the meeting tonight. Is there, based on the current parking scenarios, do we have a parking congestion problem or not? In other words, is there a current parking as new development, proposed new development is going to be guest parking less, and then so do we have a ongoing issue with parking? Can someone enlighten me on that?
We've never had a complaint as long as we've managed the property.
Okay.
And our parking log of registered vehicles is not full.
Okay.
So to the best of our knowledge.
Sure.
Many of our residents only have cars.
Okay. So, planning director, you have a comment?
No, I was just going to say that it's somewhat subjective to determine whether or not at any given time, if there is sufficient parking at the site. In an afternoon when people are maybe at work, then there may be sufficient parking. But I know in the evening, as I mentioned, this is just anecdotal. We were out there last night, and it was a little crowded on the street parking, but most of us were able to find a parking space within reasonable distance. We do hear, we did hear from some of the residents last night that from time to time the parking can be tight, but I think the bottom line is that the proposed project does meet the standards, and as you saw in the table, it does provide more than the requirement under the state density bonus law for parking.
Got it. And the next question here is the proposed community center. Is that in the new leasing office building that's being proposed?
No, yeah, that's correct. It is, yes.
Okay. So is there going to be a co-using space between the leasing office and the community designated use? Is there any leftovers on the square footage?
No, it's a separate space.
Okay, all right. And in one of the staff presentation slides noted there were a couple of trees, I guess, were cut down without.
The first we heard about it was today. I'll look into it tomorrow. I don't know anything about it, other than I asked them to get bids on the trees, and I don't know what happened, so I'll have to check into that. The bathrooms, by the way, for the building will be used by the tenants as well as the employees.
Okay, thank you for the enlightenment. In the architects and the landscape architects plans, they have noted quite a bit of playground upgrades. So, question for Ms. Thompson: have those equipment or the specific locations and types being preliminarily submitted for consideration?
So they are with the project plans. So they will be, if assuming correctly, they're structures. So they will be reviewed under our building permit process.
Okay.
If the project is approved and they go forward and apply for building permits, those play structures are required to get a building permit.
Are these the pieces of equipment or the structures? Are they do they have any specific designations, or is it a part of the condition of approval?
If you like to have a certain type of structure or certain size, we can definitely include that as a condition of approval.
Okay, planning director.
Mr. Chair, what we would typically do, and I don't know if this is in the conditions of approval currently, but if that's part of something you would like to recommend, typically we would include language in the condition of approval that the final design for the playground and the open space areas would be subject to approval by staff, usually the planning director or their designee. And then if there are specific items that you would like to see, you could suggest those. And then when the plans come in, we would review those according to what is in the condition of approval.
So if we may, just go ahead and make a note of that. So this way we do have potentially, if the project is approved, potentially a path, to get products out there that's appropriate.
By the way, it needs to be approved by your insurance company.
Fully agree with that. So is the fruit trees as well.
Okay.
Just kidding there. Question for this is for the land development and also traffic section of the segment of the staff. The street that's existing in the development itself is Sunny Hills Court. That, by definition, is a private street. Is that correct?
Steve Chen, Transportation Manager. That section of the street although it has the same name on the court and a street, the court section is a private street.
Okay, because I'm looking at the plans, and there's Sunny Hills Court, but does not designate as private. Shouldn't that be designated as private as a street? The street standards are probably somewhat different.
Yes, I don't have the full history of why the street naming was designated as such, but there is a portion of public street towards connecting to Milpitas Boulevard, the section coming directly from Dixon, that's private street. From the configuration of the development, it looked like it was a court at one time, And sometime later down in the development, that connection between the court and the connection to Milpitas Boulevard was connected. So that's why we have a continuous street between Dixon and Milpitas Boulevard.
So, Mr. Chen, on the same subject, the definition of court I last checked was there. It's a terminus. It does not have a additional public, secondary public egress away from the main point of entry. Essentially, in a less formal speak, it's a dead end street with a cul-de-sac at the end of it. In this case here, through the via and through the private street by the same name, it essentially is a cutoff in a through street. So is there a concept issue that we're dealing with here?
Yeah, that could definitely be cleaned up in terms of that street. The court section of that street could be renamed as part of this process potentially, but there could be some confusion there. Like you mentioned, it's a court for a certain portion of that street section, but really it's not a court.
Yeah, it is a private street, but it is, I was on site one time, and I did see some traffic kind of cutting through there as a quick way to get to Dixon. So there's definitely some concept issues as well as a main operational issue there on that end. The next question here is, if it's a court, your traffic is going through essentially should be one directional. So shouldn't one end of it be bollarded, so that the city the public services and emergency services will have access to the lock to remove the bollards in order to access it if in the event of needs. But however, you take away that the cut through.
Well, on a typical court, we like a cul-de-sac. That would be a court. There's a turnaround at the end of the court. If you look at that section of the street, you could see the remnants of that court. The elbow of the now continuous street is located. So that bulb was the old court. That would be the intent of the turnaround location. As I mentioned earlier, at some point later down the development, that was modified to make a actual street connection to the public street to the west. Okay, and is the 35.5 foot wide the private street width, in coherence with the city's current private street requirements, or not? The city does not have a private street standard. We look at street design on a case-by-case scenario on private street. Okay, and our in the fire and also other trash removal equipment going through this particular stretch is not a problem, I assume? Not that I'm aware of. Okay, thank you. And I would consider this as sort of a major project on an existing project site. Beyond the project scope as outlined in the plans right now, are there any of the site improvements that's mandated to take place in order to upgrade, for example, ADA standards and other upgrades to the current standards that's going to be taking place with the proposal? If Ms. Rosalind Thompson or Planning Director may enlighten me on that.
So in terms of site improvements, ADA parking and EV parking, etc. Is that what you're referring to, Chair? Your sidewalk act. There's no sidewalk on the side, right? Along the main street, along the main thoroughfare.
No, there are sidewalks. Yeah. Okay,
so are there because of this is a fairly large, this is beyond the base portion of the site. So is there the cone ramps or whatnot, for the rest of the site, as part of the consideration?
Yes, I did notice some, actually some of the units, the applicant may know exact number, but I did notice that some of the units are retrofit for accessibility in wheelchairs. There are ramps at the front door, and there is ample ADA parking on the site. And then if we are looking primarily, of course, we're looking primarily at the infill project. I know some of the comments, the back and forth comments, as we go through our review, and we went through 3 or 4 rounds of review with this project. I do recall that some of the comments from the building department, which has purview over ADA requirements, that there were modifications made to the site plan specific to that issue to bring it into compliance with current code.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. On page C 7.0, there's a definition of watershed on this. So can the either the architect or civil engineer enlighten me on the definition of the watershed for that particular portion of the site?
Yes, this is Ron Sanzo with Sandist. We're the civil engineers. So the watershed is essentially defining the area when stormwater falls, that area drains to a specific catch basin or series of catch basins. So that's basically defining when rainwater falls, how it drains and where it goes to.
So that essentially is filtered through the newly designed C3 areas to filter through the water source, right?
Yes. So this particular exhibit, it shows the existing watersheds, and then there's I believe the next exhibit shows how we're treating any sort of proposed condition. So any sort of impervious area that sees water would flow through a bioretention area and then be discharged. So it cleans the water before it discharges it to the city system.
The bioretention areas here is rather, how should I say, segmented and scattered throughout. Is there a design reason for that to be, I guess, here and there and there and there?
Yeah, so typically, so because stormwater systems are gravity based, you want the stormwater system close to the building. So if there's a parking lot or a building that's draining to it, you want it nearby, and that way you're not piping it a long ways and having to pump it. So it's a local solution that you want to make sure is next to the impervious area.
And the question to Planning Director Thomas, with the C3 area so scattered, are we finding less, sort of usable open space area as a result of the configuration? Or is there a certain economy of scales where we can focus a couple in one area so that we allow for sort of more contiguous open space?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I think it's typical that we see the detention basins scattered around the site. Sometimes when we have one large detention basin, it can become, I'm not suggesting that will happen here, but it can become an unsightly area. I think the engineers always do a very good job in locating these detention basins so that they capture the drainage usually from the impervious surfaces that are closest by. So this is what we're seeing here is typical practice. While we're on this topic, I would like to highlight some of the work that goes on behind the scenes by staff before these projects come to the Planning Commission. And this is a very good example. So very early on with this project, our land development division, the engineers, had identified some issues with the drainage in the overall area surrounding this site and the need for the drainage to be caught on the site, not only to meet the C3 requirements as they're called, but also because in the general area there are concerns around how the drainage of the overall neighborhood is working. And so our engineering team worked very closely with the project engineering team to address these issues. And again, that's part of the reason why sometimes these projects take quite a long while to get to the Planning Commission, is because staff is working to or coordinating, collaborating with the project team to address those types of issues.
Thank you, Director. And the next question here is kind of coming to a sort of discussion about aesthetics and I guess preferences or whatnots. There's earlier mentioned in the presentation with regards to historical resources, with regards to the elevations to the buildings. Is it necessary or is it absolute for the new buildings to be adhering to a, how should I say, an older version of the the facade? We can pay tribute to it, and we can kind of give highlights and that speaks the language and provide that the inspirations there too. The facade, from the presentation material and the lower photo, it definitely looks 50 years old or more. And so, we're building brand new, we're proposing brand new buildings that looks like it's going to be 50 years old, by the virtue. Is there a reason or a rationale to arrive at this point?
I can provide a few comments about that, and then either the architect or I see the CEQA consultant also may have some comments on that. I will say that if you take a look at the initial study mitigated negative declaration and also the historical report that was prepared for this development, for this proposed project, they actually did a very detailed job of identifying, and you heard some of that in Mr. Wiswell's presentation, of why this particular development, which is 50 years old or more, would be, what is the historical significance and what needs to be done. In short, and the answer to your project, as I understand it, is that the project needs to complement, I think is the best word to say, the historical structure, what will be the historical structures, but they don't want it to look exactly the same. They want it to, the Secretary of Interior standards require that it look just, it looks similar and complement, but there might be elements that are different so that you can differentiate the new from the old. And I think these pictures do a good job of that. If you look at it, they're quite similar. But as was noted in the staff report and in the report, for example, there is a peaked roof above, that changes the roof line of the newer buildings. It's just different enough that you will see a difference, but then a lot of the other elements are the same. And Matthew, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that, or Anthony, the architect.
Thank you.
To kind of add on to that a little bit is, if you notice where these new buildings are going to be placed, they are really right in the middle of the development. So the goal that we were really trying to achieve was, as you're driving through the property, you feel like you're in the same development. So that was our goal, to, make them distinguished, the pitched roof and the addition of certain windows and placements of the different colorings. But we didn't want this to stand out like a sore thumb as you drove through the community. We wanted to kind of have a cohesive property, because it is one property. This is an infill development.
Thank you. That is actually the flip side of my comment. So it needs to complement, but as the applicant has indicated, it can't be so different that it sticks out, literally sticks out like a sore thumb. It has to look close, but not exactly the same as. And then Matthew, I think you're unmuted now if you have.
Thanks, Ned. Yes, you're exactly right. And those are standards that are set by the Secretary of the Interior. Like I mentioned in my presentation earlier, they have a number of standards for preservation or rehabilitation or renovation or whatnot. And so within each of those standards, there are a number of guidelines. We evaluated the project against those guidelines, and those include the use of the buildings, the visibility of the buildings, the scale and massing and materials, and like was mentioned before, it should pay respect and be compatible with the existing buildings, but should be differentiated enough so that you can tell that they're new buildings.
Thank you very much for the comment. Appreciate it. Questions circling back to the father and daughter dual here. With regards to the calling for the hardy siding for the siding, is the existing project is also using hardy siding as the material?
Yes.
Okay. Have you historically found issues with hardy sidings as sort of a maintenance intensive and hard to kind of keep them straight as they intended to be straight, as they're pretty pliable materials?
Yeah, well, as you can see, this building's 50 years old, and it's in pretty good shape.
This is original siding material?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
There might be some that have been repaired. I don't see that here. And if they need to be repaired, we would repair them. But I don't think in this picture here, I think this is all original.
Okay, all right. Just from experience, hardy has been a really hard materials to work with, in terms of, it follows the unevenness of any framing, highs and lows, and creating also the end cap issues for waterproofing purposes. So just want to verify that. Last question here on your sheet E 1.0. There's noted LED vapor lights. These are located almost like dead center of the buildings. And just out of curiosity, where are those lights? There's the plan. So in the building here, you see there's a almost look like a continuous dash lines. So are those LED lights located, by the looks of it, it's too far in from the building facade itself. From the it almost looks like interior lights, but don't know what that is. So
yeah.
Can you enlighten?
Yeah, it's Anthony, the architect here. What they show is that these are the lights on the ceiling of the carport, because those are exterior, because they are not indoor. That's why they included that in this drawing.
Okay, so this is on the eave line, and this is on the underside of the roof.
Correct.
The facade.
Correct, Chair. Yes.
And you have, because by the location of it, it looks like you have an awfully long overhang, hanging out there. Is that the intent? Because of looking at the elevations, you probably have about 2 feet of overhang. So this
right here. Right here.
So the lights, the overhang is shown by the dash lines, and then the dash, this type C typical, these dark dash lines. So those are on the roof, interior, or I'm just a little confused about its location.
Correct, Chair. So the darker dash lines type C, there are two per each carport, and they're on the ceiling of that carport, underneath the second floor. So it's at the ceiling of the carport.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll take your word for it. Okay. Thanks. And the last question here is, I don't know whether for staff, are these new units going to be the proposed new units sprinklered or not? Fire sprinklered?
If I may share,
here we go.
Jaime Garcia here, Assistant Fire Marshal.
Good evening. Thank you.
Definitely, yes. The new buildings, all of the new buildings are required to have sprinklers within them.
Okay. All right. Then the next question here goes back to the engineering side. There's going to be a fair amount of new water supply required. So looks like we may have, is the current water supply line sufficient, or are we bringing in new resources on site?
Yes, this is Ron Wilsandis. So we're tapping into the existing main, and based on fire flow tests, there is adequate pressure. So we think there's adequate water and supply for the overall development.
Okay, great, thank you. And my last question, and I'm sure you'll be glad. Will the parking and carports be assigned to specific units, or are they open to as you wish? If if the developer may be able to answer us on that.
I think they'll be assigned to the specific tenants.
Okay, all right. Okay, I am done with my questions. And commissioners, any other questions or comments for staff and the applicant team? Don't see it. Commissioner Chuan, you have a raised hand. Please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just had a question in terms of the time frame for this project construction. What is the time frame for the once the development starts and the completion time?
Well, it's a good question. This has taken so long just to get to this point, through over 3 years, and we're waiting. This obviously goes to the city council. After we go to the city council, we'll go out to bid. After we get bids, we'll get the construction loan, and then we'll start construction. So with the COVID situation, it's created delays even just to get a loan for a bank. The bankers are working out of their homes, so it just takes more time than usual. So that's a really good question, but it's a question that really can't be fully answered, only because I can't tell you how much more delays I'm going to get. I don't know when the city council will schedule this for approval, assuming we get approval with you guys today to move on. But if this goes smoothly, during the summer of next year, if this gets approved, we'll immediately start doing a lot of work on the landscaping throughout the property. On the construction side, we'll right after we go to bid and pick a contractor to do the work, I'm anticipating the spring of next year to start construction.
Okay. No, I was just asking, in terms of when let's say you do start construction, and how long the time frame are you anticipating? Let's say you start breaking ground and completion of the.
It should take about 8 months, but with what's going on with COVID and getting supplies, getting materials today, that's all at this point pretty unknown. I'll get a better idea once I get a contractor on board and get a time frame from him.
Okay. No, I just want to know. And then just in terms of that, because one of the things I'm just, wondering about is, with the time length of, say construction starting, I guess maybe that might be a future conversation around that. But okay, that's the only question I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Chuan. Any other commissioners' comments or questions to the ensemble staff and the applicant team? Okay, seeing none. This is a public hearing item, and at this point in time, I'd like to go ahead and open this to a public hearing process. And if I can turn to the commission recording secretary.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you also had Commissioner Belong. He had his hand raised. I don't know if you saw that. Sorry.
My apologies. Did not see that. Commissioner Belong, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So like piggybacking on Commissioner Chuan's comment about construction, you said it's going to be, somewhere around the 8-month mark. Are you going to have designated parking for construction? I know parking seemed like it was brought up a few times tonight. How are you going to handle that?
When we get a contractor on board, we'll have to figure it out.
Okay. And then so as far as contracting goes, it's just going to be an open private bid?
Yes.
Okay. And then through the chair, I just wanted to acknowledge Commissioner Albana also had her hand up. So
thank you very much. Commissioner Albana, would you please?
And thank you for your time, applicant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chair. I was just wanting to know if does this new project fall under the flood zone?
I don't believe so. I don't think this is on a flood zone area.
Oh,
Anthony, would you know the answer to that?
Yeah, our engineer can answer that.
Yeah, this
Ron?
is.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Ron Wilsandia. So all of the finished floors of the new units will be out of the 100-year flood zone. So it's not within the flood zone area.
So they will, we don't need like a flood insurance or anything for this project for the residents or for the tenants?
No, I mean, it would be out of the 100-year floodplain. So it wouldn't be anything other than normal insurance. It wouldn't require any sort of abnormal insurance because it's in a floodplain or anything like that.
And then during the construction, last question, during the construction, will any of the other residents be inconvenienced with the noise or the dust? How would that be, handled?
Very typical to any construction. We'll be following the CEQA requirements and keep everything to a minimum.
I see. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Planning Director, you have a comment.
I'll start, and then I may need to call upon our chief building official, Bill Tott. So this goes to Commissioner Albana and Commissioner Belong's questions. They're a little bit related as far as, what happens during the construction period? Where will people park? What about noise? What about dust and those sorts of things? So all of those issues are typically addressed as part of the building permit process, and the building permit itself will include conditions, and the applicant actually prepares a construction plan that outlines all of and addresses all of those issues. That's kind of the short of it. I don't know if there are any additional details, Bill Tott, that you would like to add on how those issues are handled by the building department.
Yeah, Ned, you are correct. There's a pretty comprehensive plan. We have a pre-construction meeting, and there's a lot of things that are addressed and made clear as far as procedures, and parking is one of them. Where you're going to stage your material, ongoing mitigation of stormwater protocols, for stormwater runoff. Then of course we have a building that's going to be demolished, and that's going to fall under the requirements of the Bay Area Air Quality Management. So which entails more than likely we're going to, the building was built, I believe, in 71. More than likely after the survey, they'll find it does have asbestos and lead-based paint, etc. So that'll be part of the mitigation process that'll be outlined through this review in building. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Commissioner, any other questions for Mr. Todd? Okay. Thank you,
Chair,
Mr. Todd. Yes.
Chair Todd, I'd also like to add that given that this is initial study mitigated negative declaration, there's going to be a mitigated or draft mitigated monitoring program, and part of that has to deal with air quality and noise. So we'll have mitigations that actually deal with those issues.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. We appreciate it. And Chair has one final question for the applicant. Is it the intent to, if a project has met its approvals, is it intent to start all construction on all buildings at the same time, or you planning on some sort of phased-in process?
All at the same time.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands from commissioners. So does anyone else have any questions? Okay, seeing none, this being the public meeting, and we're now opening up this meeting to the public forum for this project, and I'll turn the floor over to the recording secretary for public comments. So Ms. Medina, if you will.
Hi, Chair. So the first person we have in the queue is Urvish Mehta.
Thank you. Mr. Mehta, you have 1 minute.
So, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to all commissioners and as well as the city staff. I just wanted to mention that, under the CEQA guideline for the class 32, the approval of the project, should be preventing the significant effects to the traffic, noise, air quality, and water quality. I see that, there has been a tree development, that's been, ongoing. However, whether those tree development are in line with the water conservation or not, that is, going to be the one question that, to consider as, having, irrigation system and installation of sprinklers, that would probably will be having a more, water consumption, and whether that cost, would increase affordable housing cost or not, that is also to consider. Second part that, I wanted to mention is to ensure that whether there is any future scope of improvement that is also going to be put into consideration, like a EV charging station and as well or not. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. And Ms. Medina, next.
Chair, next we have Ms. Ellison McDonald.
And Ms. McDonald, welcome, and you have 1 minute. Please.
Thank you. I assume that you saw the letter that the Sunny Hills Neighborhood Association submitted today, so I won't go into a lot of detail about that. My major concern is the loss of 90% of the open space. Currently, that open area that is going to be built on is the meeting space, the social space of the tenants. There are about 30 tenants that meet there regularly during non-COVID time. And the existing benches are congregated in that area to make it easy to have a meeting. I did want to point out that the roof replacement that was being touted by the owner is being funded by the city CBDG funds. And I have a real concern about the ongoing affordability of those 170 BMR units.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. We appreciate your sharing of your opinions this evening. And Ms. Medina, next, please.
It looks as though we have no more community members in the queue. Can we, translators, do we have any? I don't see they've called in either, so we have none in the queue.
Thank you very much. And so it's been a public meeting, and may I have a motion to close this public meeting? Commissioners, anyone would like to provide a motion in a second?
A motion to close the public meeting.
Second.
Okay. I'll go down the row and do a call on the commissioners' votes. Commissioner Albana?
Aye.
Commissioner Belong?
Aye.
Commissioner Chong?
Aye.
Commissioner Chua?
Aye.
Vice Chair Alcorn?
Aye.
Chair is aye as well. Passed 6-0 to close the public meeting. Okay, commissioners, discussions, comments, and any additional questions you may have with regards to the project. Seeing no comments, is there a motion that which you would like to propose?
Can we have it put up in the screen to propose a motion to approve?
So while they're pulling that up, just a reminder that as a planned unit development amendment, that actually is a type of zone change. So the final decision will be made by the council. The Planning Commission's action tonight is actually a recommendation to the council on the applications in front of you.
Thank you, Planning Director, for the further explanation. We appreciate it. And Commissioner Albana.
So I'm proposing that we will what's the word I use? Recommend, right? To adopt?
You can read the adopt the resolution line right there. Word by
Okay,
word.
where?
Yeah, there is
Okay.
The third bullet point.
Bullet point.
All right, I see it now, I see it.
Through the chair, if I could just clarify before you make the motion, we just want to make clear that if any motion would be subject to the, I believe these are non-substantive corrections proposed or mentioned by Ms. Thompson regarding just the consistencies with the code. So we just want to make sure that the resolution that this resolution approves this subject to those changes.
Absolutely. Thank you, City Attorney, for the clarifications, and we appreciate it.
And I have two items. So I don't know, in your questioning and deliberation as it was, I don't know if there were any, I know there were a couple of issues that came up, if there were any changes that you wanted to include in the, or clarifications that you would like us to add to the conditions of approval as it goes forward to the council. And then the other item is, as you read the item, EIRs are certified, but a mitigated negative declaration is approved. I kind of splitting hairs. I don't know. Maybe the city attorney can enlighten us on that. I don't know if a certification of a mitigated is required for an MND. Does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, it's a recommendation, so I think we can go with approved if you'd like. Yeah, that should be fine.
And planning director, and you know, on the point of the playground equipment and structures, that will be subject to the editing as condition of approval for the proposed resolutions before us. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we can make
Thank
those
you.
changes. And I'm also, I just received a note from one of the meeting administrators that a member of the public is asking about previously sent emails. I guess, Rosalind, I don't know if you want to address, or Liz, if you want to address that. Any emails that were received by the city through the online public forum were packaged. Liz, do you want to provide?
Yes, so all public comment received prior to the meeting when it was initially scheduled and from thereafter up to today, well, from thereafter were included and are posted to our website. And they were distributed to the Planning Commission. The last email that we received that was from Miss Allison McDonald was forwarded to all of the Planning Commissioners prior to this meeting today. So they are in the record. They just have been posted to the website rather than reading it into the record. It's posted online.
Yes, and provided, as you noted, and provided to each of the planning commissioners prior to the meeting so that they can read through it and review it and have all of that information in front of them as part of the record.
And just to be clear to the public, this has been included as part of the record, right? These emails.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, thank you, staff and the city attorney, and Ms. Commissioner Albana. Would you go ahead, please?
Yes, I move that we adopt the resolution number 20-019, recommending to the City Council approval of the site development permit P-SD 18-004, the planned unit development amendment P-PA 19-002, tree removal permit P-TR 19-0028, and the environmental assessment P-EA 20-005, subject to findings and conditions of approval and recommending certification of a mitigated negative declaration pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15002, K2, and 15070.
Okay, and do I have a second?
And I will second that.
Okay, so Vice Chair, heard your voice first. So so the motion's made and the motion is seconded, and I'll go ahead and do a roll call on the votes.
I apologize to interject again, but just making clear that this motion includes the changes discussed to the staff report and resolution as mentioned by Ms. Thompson. And
Absolutely, and Commissioner Albana, and You're in agreement with that?
Yes, and
Okay.
subject to the, what did you say, City Attorney? And this is subject to the
Subject
to
the corrections.
the corrections
Yeah, indicated by Ms.
indicated
Thompson.
by Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. And would the second be agreeable to that as well? Vice Chair, will you be agreeable to the changes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So now we have a amended motion and an amended second. So I'll go down and do a call on the votes. Commissioner Albana?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Belong?
Aye.
Commissioner Chuan?
Aye.
Commissioner Chua?
Aye.
Good. Vice Chair Alcorn?
Aye.
And the chair is a no. So the motion passes 5-1. Congratulations to the applicant, and we wish you to do a good project by the city of Milpitas. So I think the city should be proud of what's forthcoming.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you all, and we appreciate it. And going on to the
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I
please
just to follow up on that. So this item will go to the City Council. It's currently scheduled to go forward on the November 17th agenda. The agenda is not finalized, so there's always room for change, but that is it's tentatively scheduled to go on that date, just as a general announcement.
Thank you, Planning Director. We appreciate the clarification. And the next agenda item here is a new business. It's a fiscal year 2020 and 2021 work plan and staff.
Ned,
Yeah.
you're muted. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm pulling up the work plan as we're chatting. So every year we bring forward to the commission a work plan, and this is true for all of the commissions, all 12, 13 of the commissions in the city. These are then taken to the City Council so that they have a record of what work is being done. The draft work plan is included in your staff report. The work plan for the Planning Commission is usually somewhat always the same, and it's the same in its format, but it's not always the same in its content. And what I mean by that is that the primary tasks or the primary work of the Planning Commission, of course, is like tonight, is development review. So the tasks included in that, is noted again in your staff report in the draft plan, is to attend these meetings. They're usually scheduled twice a month. Read the meeting packets, participate, deliberate. As you noted tonight, sometimes you are contacted by the applicants and you make site visits, and then you take action or make recommendations to the City Council. I think tonight, between the special meeting and the regular meeting and the 3 items that you reviewed tonight, encompasses all of the work that the Planning Commission does. And that's the lion's share of your work plan. And that's just encapsulated here in the plan for the coming year. Now, the interesting thing is we do have, as you are well aware, a couple of very interesting long-range planning items coming up before you this year, not the least of which is the general plan, something that's done, ideally every 5 to 10 years, and ours has been a little bit longer, but we will have a general plan update. The draft is out, draft EIR will soon be out, and then we will have that for your review. So that's on your work plan. We're also, as you are aware, working on the Metro Plan update, which is the Metro Plan, which is the transit area specific plan update. We expect that will be completed. Work on that will be substantially completed or fully completed within this fiscal year. So that's also mentioned. We're also hoping to kick off at some point within the next several months as we wind down on the general plan and the Milpitas plan, and we have a little more capacity. We'll get going on the Gateway plan, which is an update to the Midtown plan. So you do have 3 very substantial long-range planning documents, policy documents that will be coming forward to you. And then I always include on here commissioner training. Now, in the past year, as we've brought on board several new planning commissioners, we've had a little more training, in-house training than usual. We had all of those special meetings with our consultant, Barbara Nelson. and did house training. And then there's also, if there are virtual workshops or conferences, I know a few of you right before COVID hit were able to attend the annual Planning Commissioners Institute that is excellent, put on by the League of California Cities. And so all of those opportunities are available. And that is because it's part of the work that you do, then I always include that on the work plan. But that kind of makes up your work plan for the coming year. It's very similar every year, as I mentioned. And before we take it to the council for their sort of review and approval, I just wanted to have the opportunity for you to see what it is. And if you have any additional comments or questions, happy to respond to those now.
Commissioners, any comments for planning director and staff? Okay. So Director Thomas, annually there's, in the past it was the conference, the planning conference, planning commission, all 3 commissioners attend. This year most likely will be a virtual conference, I would assume. So will there be more opportunities for Zoom in from other more commissioners?
Overall, yes, that's generally the case. It's certainly been the case with staff. It's a lot easier it's one of the silver linings, if there is one, to the current crisis, is we've learned to do a lot more things virtually, and that certainly significantly cuts down on the cost of travel and accommodations and those sorts of things that usually go along with attending a conference. And I'm happy to report, that the content of the conferences is usually just as good. It's a little different because you're not there and you're not able to mingle and having the networking opportunities. But I've generally found that the substance of the presentations and the workshops that are done is very excellent. So as those come up, I think it will be coming up again after the first of the year. We will look at those opportunities for the other planning commissioners to take advantage of that. Yes, and so short, sorry, that was the long answer. The short answer is yes, and hopefully more of the planning commissioners will be able to take advantage of those opportunities. The one factor that's out there, we will be taking a look at, I know we will be asked, each of the directors of the departments of the city will be asked to look at our budgets as we tighten our belts during the current recession. And one of the items that we will have to take a look at is our training budget. So I'm not sure how it will affect us yet, but I do anticipate that we may have a little bit of a reduced budget there, but I don't know that it will be zeroed out. So,
well, thank you, Director Thomas. Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none. I think it's got some legal needs here to read through.
I'm sorry, not to prolong the meeting, but I do need to mention one more thing, sorry. One of your other very important functions, of course, every year you have a presentation of the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. Again, I thought of that because we were talking about budget. So that's a very important function of the Planning Commission to make a finding of consistency with our general plan. And then as I'm looking down the list on the work plan, the other thing I left out, we do have a couple of master plans that are being done by other departments in the city, namely the Parks and Rec master plan. There's a trails and there's a bike and ped master plan. I call it sustainability plan, the CAP plan, climate action plan. So as those are completed by the other departments, those will also be brought typically to the Planning Commission for your review and comment on those. So it's just another important function that you have. And then tonight we actually had a good example. Number 9 on the list, if you have it, is it says appeals by decision of the zoning administrator. Tonight you actually had, the parking lot was something that it was a site development permit, so it could have gone to the zoning administrator. But those of you who have been on the commission a while will remember that I made a commitment to you that if there were items that could be controversial or they were of a substantial nature, that as the zoning administrator, I would always refer those over to the Planning Commission. And I didn't mention at the time, but on that parking lot, I felt that I had been so involved in the discussions with the developer on that parking lot that I couldn't be an impartial judge on that. And so just out of an abundance of propriety, I'll call it, I thought that it was more appropriate for that to be considered by the Planning Commission. So that's why that was referred to you. In addition, it was a larger project, and there was an element of that that was really for, I will say, an interpretation of the zoning ordinance, and I felt like that was something that needed input from the Planning Commission rather than just having it at the zoning administrator level. So that will continue to be part of your purview as well. So thank you. And sorry to be so long-winded, but I just wanted to give you a full overview of all the work that you do. You know, you're really busy. We have these long meetings, but hopefully you find it fun and interesting, and that you're getting the information from staff that you need for your meetings.
Thank you, Director Thomas. And as usual, you know, the Planning Commission appreciates the work that goes on behind the scenes by you and the staff at large, you know, for your contribution to the city. And we'd like to take this time to thank you and acknowledge that, you know, all the work that you and especially the planning staff and also extend it to other staff members of the city, you know, for the work that you do in contributing to the livability of the city we all love. Thank you very much. And
I appreciate there are a lot of members of the other department, you know, staff members from the other departments online tonight. So I appreciate hearing those comments, and I hope that they know, you know, in addition to the planning staff, that the other departments are all involved, very much involved as well.
It takes a whole village for all of us to work together, and we appreciate the togetherness the staff has demonstrated through these interesting and weird times. And so moving on to the legal needs. Any person aggrieved by any final decision of any board, commission, or department head to the city of Milpitas may appeal the decision to the city council by filing written notice of the appeal with the city clerk within 12 calendar days of the date of said decision and paying the required fees. This time limit shall be strictly enforced. So prior to adjournment, I just want to acknowledge and want to wish Vice Chair a happy birthday, and enjoy your time away, and thank you for taking the time to
Chair.
Yes.
Before we leave, we have a public comment
for the public item
for the work plan.
For the work plan, please.
This is Uvish Mehta.
Mr. Mehta, you have 1 minute to make the presentation.
Sure. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you very much, city staff, director, and entire staff as well. I just wanted to add to that, you know, there's been quite a few development, you know, that's been ongoing taking place. So I just wanted to thank you for Planning Commission to consider all the comments, and as well as providing a response on that. As well as, you know, as a part of a work plan, I would also request the Planning Commission to consider the redevelopment of a zoning as well as the industrial code as well, as a part of a work plan, as well as the air surveillance code as a part of a commercial and industrial zone, because that would be helpful to science, technology, and innovation to prosper further in the city of Milpitas. Again, thank you very much for the consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. And Ms. Medina, I assume that's the last public comment?
Yep, that is the last comment. That is the last public comment. Planning Director Thomas, for the work plan, is it just for review that they don't have to vote on it, do they?
It was, they can vote on it if they want to make a recommendation of it to the council. I don't know. I can't. I was going to look at the. Oh, I've shut my agenda already.
Sorry.
I don't think we voted on it last year.
No, I think it was just review. I wasn't certain.
Yeah.
Inquiry.
I don't see the agenda any action item. I mean, it just says work plan. So yeah, I'm not. I'm not sure if that.
I appreciate the abundance of caution, though.
Well, thank you. If it ever becomes an issue, we'll bring it back as a
There's an agendized item.
Consent item.
Would you please, since you have control of the agenda, ma'am? All right, with all said, and happy birthday wished, and we're asking for adjournment of the meeting.
Ned, you won't be able to talk anymore after we adjourn. You got any more? I'm just kidding.
Thank you for indulging me. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Vice Chair.
Okay, I'm gonna have that chew on, and then that's Mr. Alcorn.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded motion, and all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for your time this evening, and have a wonderful evening.